Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'm basically planning my final year project. This isn't really going to be a video on how you should go about planning your final year project. It's more for me to document how I'm doing my final year project. So I'm in my second year and I've got 2 months left of that, 2.5 months left of my second year. Then I've got the summer and then I've got my obviously third year in which I have my final year project. And the final year project's not worth like the whole year. It's worth I think like 40 or 50%, something like that. So I wouldn't say it's something that you should put absolutely all of your time in and that you should start, from your second year. But for me personally, projects are stuff that excites me. When I'm studying for exams or when I'm studying for assignments or doing assignments, it's super boring. I hate all of that stuff. It doesn't excite me at all. But when I'm working on projects and I've got, in particular, like for example, with this final year project, when I've got an idea that of something that I want to do in a year's time, and then it gives me, firstly the ability to dream big because I can plan something big, knowing that I've got a year to work up to it. So the final year project is something that's been on my mind probably since first year. I've kind of had an idea of what I want to do it on, and so now I've started putting that kind of onto paper, or in this instance onto Notion. So in this video, I'm just going to talk you through where my head is at right now in my final year project. So I actually haven't discussed with my tutors or lecturers at all really the final year project. So, you know, it may not be anything to do with this, because I know that a lot of universities, for example, the lecturers, they'll have a list of, 50, 100 different projects that they want you to do. So I don't know if I'll even be allowed to, given the freedom to pick my own project. But my thinking is that whether or not they allow me to do my own project, I'm going to do my own project anyways, and then just do, the project that they pick for me as well. So again, I've seen a lot of students on Reddit talking about final year projects, and the common consensus is pick something small, pick something simple, something that you can get completed, in the time frame. Don't dream too big, etc. These kind of things. And whilst I get that, being realistic, for me, I feel like A, I have the skills to be able to learn, and B, I've got the time. So, you know, I'm motivated to do it. So I've found in my life that when I'm motivated to do something, I generally get it done. So I don't find there's any need for me to dream small here. And I would like to do something that I can continue working on even after I graduate. Like the idea of working on some research project for, the costing of a plant to do X, that doesn't excite me at all. So this is not the plan of the video, but this is how I'm planning my project. So I've kind of broken it up into kind of like the aim, topic of the project, some things I'm thinking about, potential products, things I need to look into still, and then some kind of other products that probably aren't what I want to do, but maybe something to consider, and then some more things of research. So let's start off first with this little 2 quotes that I've got at the top here. So I actually got this from my university's specification for this module. So let's read through it together. So students are required to develop a product, ideally a client external to the course team. So that's good to hear. It means that they want you to work on a product with a business, or a charity or something outside of the university, which is ideal. And that would definitely be something that I'd want to do. So it says students should research the requirements for the product, synthesize information, ideas, and practices to create a design and then implement the product. So we need to basically get the requirements for a product, gather the information, ideas, and practices, and then come up with a design for a product. And, they even said then implement the product, which is good to see, because that's something that definitely, in terms of PCB printing, 3D printing, these are all the things that I've got in mind. They should then evaluate both the product and their own performance throughout the process. And I know this is probably the part that I'm going to get most of the marks from, which is the assessment and the presentation at the end. So considering the fact that in order for me to get good marks and good grades on my final year product, I need to document it, and detail that in the report. It makes sense for me to also document it and detail that in video as well. Right, and then the second part, which is also again from the specification for the module, create a unique product by the end of the project. And this is something that, doesn't keep me awake at night, but something that I think about in terms of coming up with a unique product, especially because I don't feel like I have the basic skills to be able to design, not even design. I don't feel like I have the basic skills to be able to copy a basic product, like, you know, a power supply, or, you know, a solar panel or a motor. I don't feel like I have the skills to be able to copy that. You know, from, for example, if I followed someone's video on YouTube, I feel like that would be probably, you know, my whole final year project there. So the idea of coming up with a unique power supply or a unique, you know, motor or something like that, that is scary to think about. All right, so let's go on to the aim. So the aim is to research a gap in an electrical engineering field. I know generally for all kind of dissertations, final year projects, it makes sense to come across like an area that people aren't considering, or perhaps has been considered but hasn't really got a lot of funding. So I saw a good example on YouTube, which was the girl was talking about how this was for mechanical engineering, that the brakes on the car obviously contribute a lot to emissions and a lot to polluting the environment that are, you know, that aren't spoken about nowhere near as much as the fumes that come out of the exhaust pipe, which is, you know, a fair point, because even on you know, electric cars, they still have brakes, but obviously with regenerative braking you don't use the brakes as much, so that's a plus. But yeah, that was an interesting project that she worked on. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the topics that I'm thinking about for my project. I think actually, even though I've got this bit here, what I'll do is let's cover this bit first. Reason why is because it will frame, I think, my mindset for you guys, because it's not something that I've spoken about on my channel before. So something that motivates me, and, you know, that I feel every day, especially, you know, with the amount of stuff that I'm purchasing all the time, especially from Amazon. And you know, when you order something on Amazon and it doesn't come, let's say you order it at 11 p.m. and it doesn't show up the next day, it comes the day after, and you feel burned because, you know, you didn't get that item within that, you know, 24-hour period. You got it at, you know, after 32 hours. I feel that, and I get annoyed because Amazon didn't deliver the product to me ASAP. And then, you know, I also get that kind of thing inside that's like, man, you know, a lot of people don't have access to anything, you know, in terms of postage wise. You know, if they ordered something and they got it within 2 weeks, they'll be happy. And a lot of people don't even have the ability to go on the internet and actually order anything because they just don't have access to the internet. And the fact that I think about, you know, we think that here in the West that we're the majority of the world. So yeah, so something that I'm thinking about for my family project, which does definitely motivate me, is coming up with some sort of device that can be used to help developing countries with power. That's probably, I would say, my leading motivation. So yeah, so that's the first thing. So if you think about everything that I'm going to talk about, think about it from that perspective of something that would help the developing countries without power. So another thing that I'm thinking about is coming up with a product that is modular and can fit into existing systems. I suppose the two things there being that it's modular and the fact that it can fit into an existing system. So this is kind of two things really. So if you go back to the first point about developing countries, then their existing systems that I think about is, for example, if they've got a standard B22 light bulb and I design some sort of product that only works with LEDs, then I know that in a lot of these countries they don't have access to LEDs. So, you know, just because we use LEDs for everything, we don't use those old filament bulbs anymore. But I would be probably interested in, for example, if I made some sort of modular power supply, power bank thing, you know, that has a USB slot. It doesn't mean that everybody has access to USB lights or something. So that's something that I'm thinking about in terms of fitting into an existing system. And then another thing is, if I was to make something commercially to be used here in the West, then, you know, it doesn't really make sense, especially if I'm going to work on this after my final year project, to have, you know, some sort of product that people would have to change. No one likes change, so no business is going to want a product that they have to then, you know, gut out their system, remove something, you know, in order to put your thing in. You know, people just want, if you just say, look, I've got this thing and you can just put it into there and it will work straight away. That's what I'm thinking in terms of modular and in terms of existing systems. So whatever I'm going to do, I would like it to be modular and able to fit into existing systems. All right, now the idea of, you know, like a kit. This is kind of something else that I'm thinking about, but again, still tied in with the first 2 points. So coming up with a kit, some sort of like, you have a box, you open it up, and that it's got some different things inside there that can be put together, and the person can then, I can sell that kit, and the company or the consumer, the person can then go and purchase another kit from me to upgrade that part, or they can upgrade it themselves. So for example, it's a kit, it uses a Raspberry Pi Zero, but you could take the Raspberry Pi Zero out yourself, unscrew the screw, take the Raspberry Pi Zero out, and put in a Raspberry Pi 4 in its place, and now the system would run significantly faster. So that way, you can sell it for cheap, and then at the same time, that person can upgrade. Like the idea of upgrading, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like right to repair or these kind of movements that are happening around the electronic space, but the idea of like, you buying a laptop and your SSD is soldered onto the board, or your RAM is soldered onto the board, that kind of stuff just doesn't appeal to me at all. Like the upgradability of things is very, very important to me, and the idea that I can't upgrade my SSD if 500 if I buy 500 gig and it's too small and I can't upgrade it, that just sucks to me. So definitely something that is, I would like something that I can sell, because that would be cool to be able to do, especially if imagine if I could actually sell the product before I present my final year project. That would be amazing, right? Obviously very, very, very unlikely, but yeah, coming up with a kit that can be actually sold and also can be upgraded excites me as well. Now this is one I don't even know if it's allowed at all, but and I actually have no experience with open source stuff other than I mean, that's not true, I suppose. I use Raspberry Pis, Arduinos. I mean, I don't really use open source software. I use Linux sometimes, but not obviously, like occasionally. It's not, I don't consistently use open source products, but it's a world that I really appreciate, and it's something that when I see people doing open source stuff on GitHub, it just amazes me, and it's something that I would love to get into. And if I can work on something open source, I like the idea of basically saying, look, here's all this information, because open source is basically, I've designed this thing, you can buy it off me if you like, or you can just make it yourself. That to me is cool, because obviously the reality is that 80% of people are not going to make it themselves. They're just going to buy it off you. But it's nice that if someone, for example, doesn't have the money but could make it themselves, and save some money, that's nice as well. So the idea of making something open source, I don't know if that's allowed in terms of working on university stuff. I assume if you pick their projects that the lecturers give you, then you wouldn't be able to do it open source, because obviously it's tied in with either what the lecturer wants to do or what other companies they have worked with want to do. So I assume you wouldn't be able to do that unless that company was into open source themselves. But yeah, the idea of doing something open source, that excites me, and I have currently no idea how to go about doing that. But yeah, something for me to keep in mind. All right, and then the final thing that I'm kind of thinking about is a plug and play renewable kit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a kit, but I would just say something plug and play, especially because if I'm thinking in terms of developing countries, the idea that someone has to, for example, before using the product, you have to flash this, or you have to, upgrade, run an upgrade. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're trying to, like, imagine if I develop a product and I'm trying to get it to the Red Cross so that they can make a 2,000 of it and give it out to a village in Congo, right? Saying then, okay, once you get the product, then you have to upgrade the firmware. Like, obviously you don't want that. You want something really plug and play, especially, the idea of, okay, it's fine, just put these 6 pieces together, or you just have to get a screwdriver. Like, just the idea of, the person having to screw a screw in. Perhaps, a lot of people have never screwed a screw in before in their life. So the idea of having something, maybe fully assembled, plug and play, especially if it's going to be a kit or something, is something that literally you can just open the box and immediately start using. So that is, again, I don't know how viable it is. It's actually super difficult to be able to, especially if you're selling a product and you have to ship it, to have something plug and play. It's obviously easier to have it disassembled, but that would be something that I'm thinking about, especially as it ties into the first point about helping developing countries. because skills and things that maybe we're used to, you know, using a drill, perhaps in a lot of those places, they've never used one before. So yeah, something to think about. All right, and then a good point probably to mention here is that although this might seem like a lot, or to some of you might seem like nothing, depends on where you're at, but I've probably put about 6 hours into this right now. So not a lot of time, but you know, a fair bit. So if some of this stuff comes out and seems a bit daft, then again, it's because I've only put 6 hours of time into it. But I wanted to make this video prior to doing, you know, 50 hours of planning or 25 hours of planning, and then just being like so deep in the weeds that someone who has no experience with electrical engineering just wouldn't be able to keep up. And that's how I feel literally every time I watch YouTube videos on electrical engineering. People crack open something and they start talking about BMS, battery management systems, and they don't even mention battery management systems. They just say BMS, and then they just talk about, you know, gotta watch out for this, that, the, you know, make sure you use this XC2 connector, and I just get completely lost and confused. And you know, by the time I figured out, you know, that they were saying battery management system, you know, then I have to go back, rewind the video, and I get lost. So the plan is to basically document this, you know, hopefully every step of the way, basically. So if this stuff seems a bit dumb, I apologize. And again, you know, in video 2 or video 3, I might come back to you and say I've spoken to my lecturer and they just said no. But again, you know, if that is actually the case and I can't do any of this stuff, I probably will try and do this stuff myself anyways. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about topic of the project. So I've got a few topics here, and then I've got some stuff inside each of them that I'll try and go into as well. So I'm thinking, firstly, for the first topic, you know, would be something to do with home renewable generation. So renewable energy products that people can use at home. So for me, I'm super into renewable energy, but the only thing that I actually use, I've got like 5 solar power banks, but I never use any of them because those products are just absolute trash, right? So I don't use any of them. You know, even the expensive ones, they barely work. I've got a solar panel which I use to power a Raspberry Pi, but it's just like, you know, it's really, I'm not basically skilled enough, and I have to keep on reconnecting into the Raspberry Pi. So I need a better solution for that. I've got some solar lights that I use in the garden, but again, they're just they're really cheap and they're just terrible. So outside of those, even though I'm super into renewable energy, I don't use any of it myself. So the idea of coming up with home renewable generation products that real human beings can use that aren't electrical engineers, that's something that is something of in my mind. So I've just got small products that allow homeowners to easily integrate renewable energy. Next up, we've got commercial smart grids and microgrids. Another aspect which I'm super excited about, both in terms of obviously getting a job when I graduate, you know, in the Western world, in the UK, that would be my area that I'd want to go into, you know, working on microgrids, you know, working on smart grids. That kind of technology is what I'd want to get into. So doing a project on that, you know, for example, improving the operation I've got here, improving the operation of traditional high voltage system, enabling better interaction between customer and grid smart metering, and then where microgrids live and how they are dispersed around the local network. So yeah, that's something that if I can do my project around that topic, that's something that I would definitely be interested in doing. Okay, so next up we've got home smart renewable energy generation grid tied. So I suppose the difference between this one and, you know, the first one would be that the home renewable generation product would just be something like they're not connecting to the grid at all, right? It's just, you know, freestanding. For example, you know, stick this, you know, on your windowsill, stick it outside your window, stick it on your wall, you know, stick it in your garden at an angle, solar panel, whatever, battery system kind of thing that you could use, you know, to run DC stuff, or, you know, maybe connect AC stuff too, but you're not tying it into the grid. This one would be more of how can we do renewable products that are grid tied. I don't have anything inside here. So this topic would be, I think, possibly the most difficult to do because it's a real problem, and there's a lot that goes into, you know, the code in each country. But if I just stick to the UK anyways, like, you know, safety of tying stuff into the grid, it's very deep. and there's a lot to learn on that. So if I was to do my project on this, I'm guessing I'm gonna have to be reading a hell of a lot of documentation, and then even still, it's gonna be very hard to get. Like how would I have no idea how I'd even, like, imagine prototyping stuff. If you come up with a product, prototyping it, and figuring out. Obviously, you can't just go and practice on your house, right? So yeah, so that's gonna be a difficult one, but that's something that I'm thinking about anyways. And especially if for example there was a company that was working on this and said to me that, look, Hamid, could you just work on this simulation part? We want this, kind of thing, or we have this test place that you can test this out on, or we have this test kit that you can use. Then this is something that I'd be 100% interested in. But it's gonna be difficult because obviously the grid tied thing. You definitely, if this is something that you would consider doing, if you're a student and you would consider doing this, definitely don't practice at home. The last thing, imagine if there's a lot that can go wrong here, basically. Especially if you imagine if you was to turn on a generator and end up feeding voltage back. Let's say if you had a power cut or whatever, some engineers came out, to work on your line, and you fed voltage back in. Very dangerous stuff. All right, this is an exciting one. So DC microgrids. I've got DC microgrids and I've got DC islands. They're kind of both similar things. So DC microgrid would be having, instead of AC power, you got DC power, right? So DC power grid that's integrated alongside traditional AC stuff. And then the island would be a DC power grid that operates as an island, completely disconnected from the main grid. Now, this is something that I think it might be in Japan, or I'm not sure, but I assume in other places in the world anyways, whereby you're getting a lot of people now that are just powering, entire buildings off of DC and not AC. Or like, for example, the building's still grid tied, but a whole floor in that building, let's say for example you have 20 floors, top 5 floors, they're not connected to the grid. They're all just connected to DC. So that kind of, I don't really know much about this. As you can see, look, there's literally no research. I've got one line here. I watched a video on it, but that's something that's exciting. And obviously AC makes sense for what we use it for, but from listening to a lot of experts, I've watched a fair few seminars on microgrid technology and renewable energy. It seems like we may end up going to a future whereby things are DC and we have lots of small isolated DC things. So if this is going back to researching a gap in an electrical engineering field, this seems like something whereby I could spend 9 months of my life researching and looking into and designing something that could actually be useful. But again, whereby this is quite new stuff, it might be way above my skill level. But I suppose at the same time, look, pretty much everything I've said in this video is way above my skill level. So yeah, but this is something that I'm thinking about anyways. Okay, now the last two, again, this kind of ties in with the developing country stuff, which is what I'm excited about. So you've got backup power generation for developing countries. Now, I was thinking something to do with like during power cuts. So my dad is from Nigeria. I first went to Nigeria in 1997, 1998. And I remember the power going out, and I remember being scared. I was a little kid. It was dark, and it was just something, you never experienced growing up in London. But there, I remember it was often, like maybe if I was there for 5 weeks, it happened, multiple times a week, once a day. And then I went in 2003, and again, the exact same thing. And I spoke to one of my Nigerian friends, and he went in 2018, and again, same thing, power cuts constantly. And so it just seems to be like a regular feature over there, and I think everybody has diesel generators. And so if you extrapolate that, across many other countries in the world where their grid is not stable, then the idea of having backup power generation and working on or working on like technologies that could help people out in those situations. So I was thinking of like doing something that, let's say like a switching system that switches to solar and diesel. And that would be for more the wealthy, because I know most people have diesel generators, out there, you know, or not maybe not most people, but a lot of people have diesel generators. So coming up with something, some sort of renewable energy system that can work alongside their diesel system. Like I was thinking something like, and maybe I should probably write this down, but I was thinking something like the diesel generator kicks on and charges a battery, and then once that battery's charged sufficiently, then turns off the diesel generator automatically. But yeah, that would be something I'd have to look into quite a lot, because you know I'm from London. You know, I live up north now in Yorkshire, and you know I'm so far removed from that world that I don't know much about it. And so yeah, that's probably gonna require a fair bit of research. But again, it's something that excites me. You know, the idea of, like, you know, allowing a kid to finish his homework, that excites me. You know. Okay, and then lastly, I've got renewable power without batteries. I was thinking about this because obviously, since batteries are the most expensive part of most systems, and it obviously can be hazardous, it would be ideal to have energy solutions that don't require batteries. And this is the last thought that was on my mind, you know, before recording this video, which I just kind of touched upon, was using solar power with no batteries, which might seem a little bit silly, but if you're thinking about, you know, like village people, you know, in South America and Africa and Asia, that, you know, they don't have much. Let's say they have mobile phones, but you have a solar panel. If you can charge, you know, if you can remove the battery and just say, for example, okay, look, you know, whilst it's during the day and you have sun, you can use it, and then at nighttime, obviously, you just can't use it. That's better than, you know, them not having anything, or having to leave the house and go and charge their phone elsewhere. So it seems like a simple solution, but for example, coming up with some sort of product that, you know, is very good and very useful, that can work without batteries. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. So again, you know, I might post an update to this video number 2 of planning my final year project, and this whole stuff might be removed and I might change my mind, but this is where I'm at right now. So let's cover some of the potential products that I'm thinking about. So I've got a home solar battery AC output kit. These things are exciting, and I've actually considered buying one. So let's have a look. So you've got this Rav Power one on Amazon, which is really nice. £66 it was. Oh, I think that was on deal. But yeah, so anywhere from 65 to £90. So it's a battery, and then it also has AC outlet, so you can just plug in, like, you know, your standard laptop charger or whatever. So designing something like this seems, you know, exciting to me, especially when you think about how many parts go into, you know, having a battery, you know, and then managing that battery. That circuitry there is, you know, intense. That's a lot there. And then if you think about, okay, so then you've got the battery, then you've got the, you know, the BMS system. Then on top of that, you're now going to need a sine wave, you know, inverter to produce a true sine wave, so you don't damage the actual AC loads. So if I was to design all of that, I feel like I would learn loads doing that. Now, again, this is, you know, already a product that already exists on the market. So if I was to do this, it would not really meet kind of like most of these. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if the open source community would benefit from something like that. You know, it doesn't really hit the things that I'm thinking about. But just purely from the angle of me as Hamed, as an electrical engineering student, for me to learn, this is a project that does actually excite me, in terms of this would be the kind of stuff that I would like to learn about. So again, you know, regardless to whether or not I do this as my final year project or not, this, just specifically designing this, is something that I'm super interested in. And without a doubt, at some point on my channel, you're going to see me buy probably this Rav Power thing. I might buy 2, keep one for myself for me to use it, and the other one, crack it open and have a look inside. So yeah, this is something that I'm thinking about. Solar panels plus battery pack, AC outlet, mobile app. Especially, you know, the idea of me designing a mobile app, you know, and using Bluetooth, you know, sending the data across, all of that whole world of stuff just excites me a lot. So I've got some pages here about, for example, a 1 kilohertz sine wave inverter, which links to this amazing website, electronics4u.com. You talk about a 1 kilohertz sine wave inverter. So look, the idea of me learning about this kind of stuff definitely excites me. And then have a look here. So we've got microinverter. Now, something that does scare the hell out of me is the idea of me converting 12 volts DC to 230 volts AC. That's something that I don't really want to be doing in my house, in my loft. So yeah, I don't know how I'd get about doing this on this, but I definitely don't have the finances to be, trying to build this kind of inverter and then feeding that into my oscilloscope and blowing it up. So yeah, something that I'm kind of thinking about, but yeah, a bit scary at the same time. Okay, next up, I've got Raspberry Pi solar battery pack. So I'm currently powering one of my Raspberry Pis off of solar, which basically I have, a medium-sized panel. I don't even know what age it is, and then I've got a 12-volt battery, and then that powers the Raspberry Pi. So that's kind of overkill, and I could probably power, a bunch of Raspberry Pis off of that. So I don't know the whole data and the numbers side of that project that I did, and so designing like a proper, Raspberry Pi solar battery pack, that's something that excites me. This Pi Juice have one here, but here you can see it's £90, and I get it, it costs money for stuff, but £90 is crazy. That's a lot of money just for you to be able to put power your Raspberry Pi for yeah. So, and then someone else designed one here, which I think looks amazing. Just a basic 3D printed case, got a tiny little solar panel on there, and a Raspberry Pi. So I don't know. This kind of style doesn't really suit me in the sense that you're gonna like, especially in the UK, you're gonna leave your Raspberry Pi outside. Maybe if you can put it on a windowsill, I suppose. But then again, you got the issue of the Raspberry Pi getting hot and then thermal throttling because if you're leaving out in the sunlight. So I don't know exactly what I want to do with this, but this is just something that I'm thinking about in terms of, powering a Raspberry Pi and having a Raspberry Pi solar battery pack. And again, this kind of ties in with the open source stuff, whereby if I can design something open source and just give it out to people, I know that a lot of people will be grateful for that. So that would be something that I would really enjoy doing. So yeah. And then Raspberry Pi solar camera, again, this is something that I've already got set up myself. All right, so have a look here. So this is what I did. When did I do it? April the 17th, 2020. So a year ago now. So I've just got a Raspberry Pi. Oh, sorry, I've got a dummy camera, just like one of these cheap dummy cameras. I've got a Raspberry Pi inside there with the Raspberry Pi camera module. This is a solar panel that I've got, and the battery that's stuck up there with the charge controller. So, oh, and then I've got a 12-volt to 5-volt converter that I've got taped up there. So this is something that I've done, which a lot of people, would be interested in. And if I can design a true actual product for this that can be used, that's something that, again, that would be something that would excite me, whereby you could have all of the source files or whatever, print it yourself, coming up with like either a product, a kit, or an open source project around this. That's something that excites me. All right, and then I'm also thinking about some sort of converter cable hubs kind of thing, which seems like that would be a fairly easy project to do. So basically like a modular kit that normal people in developing countries can use to interface things like that they find around them, like 12-volt car batteries, solar panels, charge their phones, connect light bulbs. So basically safe, durable converters, connectors. I couldn't really think of like any examples for this, but like what comes to mind, which again this might be a bit crazy, but you've got a standard 12-volt battery, you put the positive and negative terminal onto it, right? So let's say, for example, imagine some 14-year-old kid, they got this old car, takes out the car battery, or he gets a car battery, takes it home, puts on his positive and negative terminal, connects it into this hub that I've designed, and then let's say, for example, then from that, I don't even know what voltage you'd need to charge a phone. Actually, I just thought about this. 5 volts, right? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, so let's say I had a 12-volt to 5-volt converter in there. That was, a nice, well-designed one. And then he could then plug in his phone charger into that, and he could charge his phone from that 12-volt battery, basically. just something basically, like for example, if I researched more into this, like how do a lot of kids in developing countries hurt themselves or harm themselves when it comes to, or what things are they doing that are dangerous when it comes to powering stuff like their phones, and then developing like a converter, or something that they can use in place of uh what they're currently using, basically. So it seems a bit simple, but then that would be something that, for example, if a charity said to me, yeah, you go on, we'll fund that, make send the designs to China or whatever, get it made, 1,000 of them, and then we'll send it out to local communities. That's something that would excite me. That you've just helped improve some kids' lives, and you might even save one of their lives. So coming up with like a safety, I suppose, probably let's put like a safety, like a safety device, something like that. Yeah. So I've got USB hubs, cable connectors, B22 bulb socket to solar panel. Yeah, something like that. So you can see here that obviously not much thought has gone into all of this. Forgive me. Again, like I said, it's been about 6 hours of planning on all of this. And most of it's just been kind of like spitballing things that have come to my mind over the last year. All right, and then thermal imaging camera, which I suppose people don't really need, and it doesn't really fit the things that I'm thinking about. But, for example, my kitchen gets absolutely freezing, and I just know that I'm losing so much heat. And as someone that's into, energy, like my actual job is an energy broker, it hurts me to know that I'm just losing all this heat. And so it would be, I don't know, I was thinking of, for example, like, you stick a camera up, let's say, like, for example, it's a thermal imaging camera, but can be also used as like, just like a normal like baby camera or a safety camera that you put up, to watch your back door or whatever. But at the same time, it can tell you where there's leaks in your house in terms of where you're losing heat. So something that is like, it's a multifunctional camera that can be used, for safety. You can connect it to your phone, but basically also serves as a good way of detecting, where you're losing heat in your house, kind of thing. So it's still energy related, and as you can see, like I'm obviously I'm deep into energy. Like I'm interested in energy, home energy, energy consumption, energy generation, so power generation. Yeah, so this is kind of a bit silly and probably not something that I'm gonna do, but yeah, something that I just put down there because it came to my mind. Home electricity switching device. Probably don't see myself doing this, if I'm honest with you, but basically a device that switches your home from the grid to your solar and battery setup or to a generator. So I've got a link here, which this is what someone else came up with. So here's like the instructions that they come up with. They didn't actually so it's on that electronicsforyou.com website. They didn't actually come up with like any real design. It was more of a simulation, but seems like a very good idea to me. But again, working with the grid just seems something that is like out of bounds for me, to be honest with you. But let's just run through the steps here. So we've got initially main supply is on, so you're connected to the grid. So all other power sources will be off as main supply is given the highest priority. So you charge your battery on your solar panel charges your battery, but it's not connected to your house. As soon as main supply turns off or power cuts off, your solar supply will automatically be selected and the system will run on solar supply. Now, if main as well as the solar supply are not available, then the inverter is automatically selected and the system runs on an inverter supply. That bit there, is way more complicated than, I mean, each part here is super complicated. Just the things that come to my mind, like, for example, if you was running your house on solar and then you turn on a washing machine. Yeah. Anyways, or even a Hoover. Okay, so yeah, I mean, even just now, I'm just like, this is laughable thinking about this. But yeah, let's finish it. So finally, if main supply, solar supply, and inverter supply are not available, then the system will automatically switch to generator and will run on the same. I mean, implementing one of these would be a massive achievement. Okay, now amongst all these above mentioned sources, if any of the sources of higher priority comes back, then the system will automatically switch to that particular higher priority source. Can you imagine? If any of you are crazy enough to do something like this. Link it to me, please, because this would be amazing. That would be an absolutely amazing product. I mean, that wouldn't be a product, that would be a whole bloody system. Okay, so we've got diesel solar hybrid system. So this is something that I'm seriously considering, and I've seen this company Elgris, they have this. So I don't know about this telecom and hybrid system, but just looking at this basic single for single generators. So it's integrating solar into diesel mini grids or generators, right? So but basically the building will run off of solar, and then when that's not available, switch to diesel. And likewise, for example, once solar becomes available again, then it will switch off the diesel generators and switch back to solar. So for example, I thought about if I can design a module for that. So someone's already got a diesel generator, they do or they don't have solar, doesn't matter, but then they could buy solar with this module, and then it would automatically switch them from diesel to solar, when their grid's out. So that seems like something that would be very useful to businesses and homes. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking about, like a diesel solar hybrid system. Now this open source ecology, some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not. It's been going on for quite a while. They've got a nice website here. So this guy done a TED talk. This guy here. And it's basically the idea of building open source blueprints for. So you basically have, he said he identified 50 products or 50 machines that the world needs to live on. And so his idea was to basically make them all open source, such that anyone anywhere in the world can come up with these 50 machines, and they could live basically sustainably by themselves. So he's got things like, there's got things on here like 3D printer. So this is his progress. So at the moment they made a 3D printer, a microphone, a CEB press, and a power cube. Power cube was, I think it might be like a hydraulic. I can't really remember what the power cube was. Then I've got micro tractor, CNC circuit mill, rotor, soil pulverizer, laser cutter, tractor. So the idea was to basically make, so he said it's 75% of the way. You basically, for example, find a way to design, your own fully functional tractor, using a 3D printer, for example. So what I was thinking in terms of all of this was to basically pick one of like the electrical side of things. The solar concentrator, electric motor and generator, nickel iron batteries. Has got some of the electrical stuff basically, and work on designing this. So I was considering maybe like emailing them and seeing where they're at with some of this stuff and seeing if I can get involved. So they've got here a universal power supply, which might be way out of my league, but basically they want to design an open source power supply, wind turbine, a solar concentrator, a grid tie inverter, open source thermoelectric generator. So something that I'm considering, maybe reaching out to the guy Marsing who's in charge of this, or maybe his admin team, I don't know, and seeing if there's anything on here that I could get involved in. But that seems like, a lot of people have said that it's dead, it's a dead project, but some people have said it's not. I don't know. So now this, I kind of got the idea just one day looking at my Fitbit on my wrist. I was like, couldn't this thing charge itself? Because I have to keep charging it every day or every 2 days. And I was just like, couldn't it charge itself? So I Googled it, and there was this Ampy Move thing, which was, the idea was someone who runs or jogs to work. If you jog to work 2 miles, jog back home, then you could charge your phone on that device. And I thought to myself, that would be amazing if you could actually implement that. Now, this actually sold and it did terribly, and there was, I looked at the Amazon reviews and people hated the thing. Then it was absolutely rubbish. So, but the idea of, it seems like a good idea. Like there was this 3 girls who, in 10 years ago, they developed this ball, and inside the ball it was like a coil and a magnet, and so they had a capacitor in there as well. And the coil and the magnet would charge up the capacitor, and then, I don't know, they said capacitor, but it must be a battery, right? But they said that then you could then plug your phone into the ball and charge your phone. And so even if that gave your phone 50%, the idea that you can have some kids, in the desert somewhere and in a village, and they were just kicking a football around for fun, having a blast. and then the parent could then charge their phone or their I was gonna say iPad, but their tablet. They could charge it off of the fact that these kids were playing, kicking the ball around. And so then that led me to thinking that, okay, couldn't you get, some sort of watch, wristband that would be charging from kinetic energy? But yeah, so maybe something that I could look into, but I don't have a physics background. I'm terrible at physics, and yeah, maybe I don't know if there's already products or open source stuff available that I could use to work on this. That again, it fits my desire to try and make something that can help, other people. Next up, solar fan. This is something that I just came up with, an hour actually before recording this. So a fan that is big enough or powerful enough to provide actual cooling, because obviously in a lot of these countries it's boiling hot. That doesn't have a battery, so it'll be actually cheap to make. You just need, a decently powerful motor, and especially if you can 3D print the whole thing. I don't know how cheap you could actually make it, but having something like this. So I got a YouTube video here, and I actually found this product, which is actually amazing. So it's like it's called a mini solar plumbing vent. They're selling it for £42, but this will, imagine, like, for example, sticking that into your roof of your van or whatever, and then the fan would just kick on, as soon as it's sunny outside, and then we'll just turn off, once there's not enough solar. So it seems like a really cool concept that just basically when the sun's shining, the fan will turn on. And that makes sense, right? Because you don't need it at nighttime, even though, I'm sure some of them do have fans and stuff on. But designing like a fan which would be good enough to cool people down, or at least help with airflow in the rooms of their homes, but would be, operating by solar with no battery involved. That's something that excites me. So this guy's video, it's a shame he stopped posting videos. He hasn't posted for 6 months, but solar Arduino, yeah. He talks about using DC to DC converters and stuff to power powerful stuff. So yeah, the idea, if I could make an all-in-one product, again, going back to it being, plug and play, basically, a powerful motor with a powerful, decently large, like imagine a box, right? And you had this solar panel, this size, right? So a fairly big size solar panel on top of it, right? And then that box was a huge fan, nice powerful motor, and you could do it, let's say, for £20, which is not going to be possible, right? That'd probably be quite expensive, actually, thinking about it. And that's the problem, right? The more expensive it is, the less actually doable it is. And then you got the other problem with the fact that you're gonna have to be putting the fan outside in the sun, but then the person's not gonna get the cooling in their home, so that's a bit tricky. But yeah, something that I'm thinking about. Okay, and then the last product that I've got right now, which would just be like a meter, basically an energy meter, which perhaps people could easily use, because I actually couldn't find like a decent way to track my energy usage on my solar panel. It still seemed like either quite expensive or there wasn't really anything easily available. So this guy, again, Solar Arduino, he made a video where he's got basically a meter that he's designed. So I was thinking of coming up with something like that, whereby you could easily track how much power your solar panels and everything were generating, how much was in your battery, etc. So that's something that would be very useful to me, and I think would be useful to others, especially if I can make a simple product for it. So those are the products that I've got right now. Again, no idea how viable this stuff is. This is me just spitballing here. So here's the things that all the things that I need to do a lot more research into. So open source renewable projects. I did some Googling, and it's actually very difficult to find anything on it, really. That's something I'm going to look into. Kickstarter renewable projects, something that I did actually start. So I put in particular non-funded ones. So I just started here. I've got some Kickstarter stuff. I just searched for renewable energy, and these are the things that came up. This battery seems great to me. So it's not really renewable energy in the sense that this is a rechargeable battery, with a USB-C slot in there. So that is a USB-C slot. And so you just stick literally a USB-C cable into the battery and charge it. So there's obviously like a battery in the bottom bit here, and then you got like a charge controller or something, and then the USB-C port in there. That is an amazing design, right? Absolutely amazing. I'd buy a few of these. They've got a solar panel here because the idea was that obviously you could then put your solar panel on your windowsill and then charge that. I don't know how much that's going to charge. Probably going to take a very long time, but that's a cool idea and something that maybe I could think about. Not necessarily, I don't really want to get into batteries, mostly because A, batteries are expensive, and B, I feel like it's kind of like more of a chemical engineering side of things. So yeah, I don't really want to get too involved with batteries, but I'm kind of keeping this here as more of like an idea. This seemed like a really cool project. Back in 2014, he had this is a wind turbine at the top here, and it's connected to solar panels, and then it goes into the home. I was thinking of maybe something similar to this. This product here is some sort of like energy manager, which you use to program to do something with your solar panels. I can't really remember. I just saved it because this is what I'm thinking about in terms of a small like connector or something that you can just attach to your original system. So I saved this more for like the idea of what it is. And again, this is a nice example of something modular whereby they've got this little like folding solar panels thing going on here, but then they've got like some batteries here which you're charging the batteries with. And the idea was that you can this is like in 3 stacks, and you can stack as many of them as you want. So this is a stack of 3. Let's say you can stack a stack of 6 up there, and as you're stacking them together, they're basically being connected, I don't know, either in series or in parallel, whatever. But it was like a modular power pack, which I liked, so I saved that. Again, I don't think any of these got funding, I'm not sure. But that was just me just Googling stuff or searching for stuff on Kickstarter just for renewable energy. I'm going to search for more things on Kickstarter for things like solar, hybrid, diesel. I'll search all of these different terms in Kickstarter and have a look at see what kind of stuff comes up. I'm particularly interested in the non-funded stuff, because I feel like what does well on Kickstarter is like a viable product that you can sell now, and what does poor on Kickstarter is like these random these ideas. And so I'm kind of interested in the idea part of Kickstarter for me to be able to come up, for me to use as inspiration, more so than just a product. Because if I was looking for products, probably the best thing to do is go on Amazon and just see what's selling on Amazon for good products, right? So yeah, Kickstarter, I'm more interested in the non-funded ones, which might sound weird, but yeah. So I also need to look into diesel hybrid systems, as I mentioned previously, renewable products that are actually used in developing countries, which I couldn't really find much on. I did a quick search, but there's something that, again, I'd say I probably need to spend a good hour searching each one of these to see what's actually out there. So I've got renewable energy products using poverty. I've got renewable Raspberry Pi projects, renewable Arduino projects, final year project renewable energy. So just searching that in Google. I need to search for microgrid final year university projects, although I did search for this briefly, and most of the stuff that came up was just not microgrid stuff. So it was just like a solar panel, an inverter, a battery, and the person's calling it a microgrid. But if I can come up with something, for example, that simulated the load of electric vehicles, that kind of stuff, like that would be something that I'm interested in. Need to search for things like solar inverters, battery charging circuits. I obviously need to go through more about this open source ecology, which was that Martin guy's one with the 50 products, the devices that shape the world. This is a Libra.solar website, which I think, yeah, building blocks for DC energy systems. This is something that I'd like to look into. Their website seems quite cool, actually. And then we've got this. So this is more on the open source stuff. So again, these are some of the links. I think it's like their wiki that I need to go and search through. Yeah, it's their wiki. Oh no, actually no. This is a different guy's one, which I found this guy on Reddit. I can't see his name. James Pierce, maybe. Yeah, that's his name. Joshua Pierce. And he has this open source lab. That was it. Yeah. And let's see if I can find you some stuff. Yeah, that's it. Here you go. So he's got, I think it's the Hardware X gallery. He's basically got a lab where he makes a whole bunch of stuff open source. They got a 3D printed microscope, just a whole bunch of stuff, and when I saw it, I was amazed. I was like, this is the kind of stuff that I'd want to get into. Really cool stuff. All open source as well. It's amazing. So yeah, I want to look into what basically what this guy's done already, and I would love to do something similar to this, basically, whereby I can constantly this is what I was looking for. So this guy, he's actually also like a contributor or something to Hardware X, which is basically a similar thing. So again, all open source stuff. Fly-by-Pi open source closed loop control for geotechnical centrifuge testing applications. And then he's got categorized as well. So you've got engineering and material science. Then here you got electrical and electronics. And so if I could take any of this stuff and build on this would be amazing. So an IMU based traffic and road condition monitoring system. Open source IoT meter devices for smart and energy efficient school buildings. Yeah, so this sitting here now, my brain's telling me, look, Ahmed, end the video and just start going through all of this. Look at this. This is exciting stuff for me. So yeah, this is a bunch of stuff that I need to get into basically and have a look through. So these part of my list of things to look into. Some other products I was thinking about, which probably aren't really viable, but like a solar electric fence, have some PV cells, a power conditioner, a battery, power an electric fence around a rural farm. Allow farmers to be able to protect their stuff, their crops, or their livestock, with a cheap modular solution for powering your electric fence. That's something that maybe I could do. And I actually found a stat here whereby Community Markets for Conservation has installed solar fences in Zambia, protecting crops for more than 1,500 families, which is amazing, right? So that kind of stuff there, if I can work on something like that, even if it's just, imagine if it's just a module that you use between the PV cells and the battery for the fence. Just designing that would be exciting for me. Solar Wi-Fi. Don't really know how this would work, but I've got a PV panel plus a Wi-Fi router and an antenna and a battery and a charge controller. So solar panels charge battery to power Wi-Fi antenna and a router that hop internet signal from single broadband access point across multiple nodes. And it was especially exciting as well is with Elon Musk's Starlink satellite, which if you haven't looked into, you should. It's amazing. So as they send more Starlink satellites up, then more and more rural developing nations, etc., people should have access to internet via satellite, which is amazing. So the radio, which I thought was a great idea, and then I found out that they're actually on Amazon and they're really cheap. So probably won't do that, but I thought it was quite cool anyways. And you got solar phone, which again, I don't know how it would work, but the idea of, for example, designing like a phone box like you had in London where you got those red phone boxes. If you had that, with solar on top, with some shade, so the person could obviously get out of the sun, but be able to use the phone that is powered purely off of the solar panel, and designing like the electronics behind that. So yeah, something I've been thinking about. And then just some other stuff here, which I'll round this video now. It's been a long one. So videos I've watched. So I've already watched these videos, and these are all quite inspiring. This guy's one is amazing. Looks like, it looks a bit shabby, but it's just an Indian guy on YouTube who made this. So it's a solar panel, a DC charges the batteries, and then could also manually charge the batteries from this point here, turn it on and off from there. And then this is the board which does the solar, basically like the charge controller for the batteries. And then you've got here the DC to AC, where he's got a transformer, which then basically has an AC output. So me designing something like this, that's quite inspirational. These are some videos that I've watched which are quite good. Links. So I've just got Electronics Hub, which is a list of a whole bunch of different projects that have been done on solar. So I'm not too interested in like copying someone else's project. That's not really what I want to do. But I've got it there just, for like inspiration, motivation kind of thing. Open source stuff that I found so far. So I've got this guy made a short proof USB hub. So you can't basically short out the points. So here's his board. So this is the inside of this, where basically it's impossible for you to short out your USBs. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that I'm interested in He's actually done this all open source as well. But this is the kind of thing that I'm interested in, instead of USB though, but something that's more usable for people in developing countries. And what else? Finally, what do I have here? So I've got videos that I need to watch. So I've got to watch this guy, Will. I think Will Prowse is his name. Great channel on all things solar. And yeah, then you've seen the Kickstarter stuff. That's it. Cool. So that's what I've got so far. Again, this is not really a video on how to go about planning your final year project, because I've never done it before. I haven't even spoken to my tutors, so I might send them this video and just say, hey, look, this is this is the things I'm thinking about. And they might say, nope, none of that, you know, terrible idea. You can't do any of that. If that's the case, then it is what it is. I'll do whatever projects they have for me. I hope that's not the case. I hope I can build on some of this. So stay tuned if you're not already subscribed. And yeah, there'll be more videos on this final year project stuff, especially as I enter my final year. But for now, I'm in my second year. I've still got exams for analog electronics. I've still got exams for communications, and then I've got embedded systems. So yeah, I've got a lot more work to do before I'm able to implement any of this stuff. But for now, I'm at the research stage, and the plan is to basically get everything out of my mind and onto a piece of paper. And who knows, maybe this might end up just being a list of projects that I work on over the next few years. And that bloody excites me. You know, the idea of working on a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, if this doesn't make you love electrical engineering, I don't know what will. This is just, yeah, I'm excited. Cool. All right, thanks for watching, guys. And yeah, hopefully there'll be a number 2 of this video where I make some progress on all this stuff. See you guys soon.